Have you ever felt like the way you think, feel, or move through the world doesn't quite match what others expect of you? Like somehow, no matter how much you try to fit in, there's always this quiet dissonance humming in the background. A sense that you're speaking a language no one else seems to understand? Maybe you've been told you're too emotional, too logical, too sensitive, too distant, too focused on the future, too caught up in the past. Maybe you've been labeled difficult, intense, cold, unrealistic, or fragile. And each time, a piece of you silently wondered if they were right. But what if I told you that you're not too much or too little? You're simply misaligned with your essence. That deep beneath the masks, the performance, and the quiet exhaustion of pretending, there's a version of you that makes perfect sense, not to the world, but to your soul. Carl Jung believed that much of our suffering doesn't come from who we are, but from who we think we're supposed to be. From birth, we're shaped by systems. Families, schools, religions, cultures. They reward certain behaviors and silence others. They train us not to be authentic, but to be acceptable. And so, we adapt. We suppress our natural tendencies and call it growing up. We contort ourselves into socially approved roles and call it success. We lose touch with our original design. Jung saw through all of it. He understood that beneath our external differences, there's a deeper architecture at work, a psychological blueprint that governs how each of us experiences life. He called these the 4 core personality functions: thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition. Not surface-level traits, not horoscope fluff, but the core operating systems of the human mind. 4 ways of processing reality, 4 lenses through which the soul perceives and makes meaning. You may think you already know who you are, but chances are you've only ever seen yourself through the mirror of expectation, and that mirror reflects more distortion than truth. The question is not, what type am I? The question is, what parts of myself have I been forced to abandon just to survive? Because here's the thing, when you operate outside of your dominant function, when you live from a mode that's not yours, life begins to feel like a constant uphill climb. Decision-making becomes stressful, relationships feel off, creativity dries up, your energy leaks, you're drained, frustrated, disconnected, and you don't know why. It's like trying to run iPhone software on an Android system. It might work for a while, but eventually everything crashes. And you start to believe that something's wrong with you. But nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just out of alignment with your nature. You're a feeling type, forced to make choices like a thinker. A sensor that's been taught to ignore your body. An intuitive constantly tells you're impractical. A thinker shamed for not being heart-centered enough. And none of that is failure. It's conditioning. It's the cost of survival in a world that punishes difference. Jung knew this cost intimately. He watched brilliant minds suffer in silence. Empaths question their worth. Visionaries shrink to fit. He knew that personality is not a prison, but a pathway, a sacred invitation to come home to yourself. And once you discover your true type, not the one you've been boxed into, but the one written into your soul, the game changes. You begin to understand why you're energized by some things and drained by others. Why do certain decisions come easily, while others tie you in knots? Why do some people feel like medicine and others feel like static? It's not random, it's psychological resonance, It's the nervous system recognizing what it was designed for. But understanding your dominant function is just the beginning. Because Jung also believed that we are not just our strengths, we are also our shadows. We are the parts we celebrate and the parts we hide, the clarity and the confusion, the brilliance and the blind spots, the parts that flow and the parts that resist. To become whole, you must first learn how you were fragmented. And most of us were fragmented by force. A child who thinks deeply is told they overthink. A kid who lives through imagination is called a daydreamer. Someone who feels everything is told they're too much. Someone who questions is told to just accept. And so we internalize shame for our deepest truth. We learn to reject the very lens through which we experience life. And that rejection doesn't disappear. It just moves underground, where it becomes self-doubt, self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, burnout, numbness. That's not personality. That's pain. So how do we begin to heal? We start by unlearning what was never true. We start by listening, not to the voice of the critic, but to the voice beneath it, the one that's been whispering all along, "This isn't you." We begin by noticing when we feel most alive, when time disappears, when things feel effortless. That's not just flow. That's your dominant function in motion. That's your soul remembering how it was designed to move. Carl Jung didn't just map types. He offered us a mirror, not to measure ourselves against, but to reflect what had been hidden. His typology was never about putting people in boxes. It was about unlocking what's buried, about freeing the parts of you that got edited out by life. Because who you are, who you really are, was never the problem. It's the expectations around you that were too narrow to contain your depth. So if you've ever wondered why the way you think seems different, why your emotions feel too big, why you see things others miss, or why the world exhausts you in ways you can't explain, stop trying to fix it. Start trying to understand it. Stop adapting to survive. Start reclaiming to thrive. Because until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. This journey is not about becoming something new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be someone else. It's about honoring the sacred way your mind works, because it's not wrong. It's rare. It's needed. And it's time to live from it. So, which one are you really? Not the role you play, not the version they like, but the soul is behind the structure. Are you the visionary who sees what others can't? The healer who feels what others suppress? The strategist who seeks truth in logic? The realist who brings clarity to chaos? Whichever it is, it's already in you. It's always been in you. And maybe, just maybe, this is your moment to stop apologizing for it and start becoming it. You've lived your entire life looking through a lens, not one you chose, not one you even knew existed, but one that has shaped the way you see, the way you think, the way you decide, the way you love, the way you fall apart, and the way you come back together. That lens is your dominant function, your primary way of processing reality. And according to Carl Jung, there are 4. Not personality types in the way the world talks about them now. Not cute labels for dating apps or vague internet quizzes. These are deep-rooted psychological orientations, soul-level pathways. 4 functions that act as filters between your consciousness and the world around you. And depending on which one you lead with, your life will feel either in flow or in friction. The first is thinking. This is the function of logic, structure, and analysis. If you are a thinking type, your mind naturally searches for patterns, for coherence, for rational explanation. You are a problem solver by nature. You make decisions based on what makes sense, not what feels good. You value truth, even when it's uncomfortable. You prefer clarity over comfort, objectivity over sentiment, and principles over popularity. To others, you might come across as cold or detached, but you're not unfeeling. You just trust reasoning more than emotion. When this function is dominant, you're at your best when organizing chaos, constructing systems, and creating efficient solutions. But when it's overused or disconnected from other parts of you, it can become rigid, perfectionistic, and emotionally tone-deaf. Your challenge is not thinking less, but learning when to let emotion speak. Then there's feeling. The feeling function is not about being emotional, it's about value. It's the inner compass that tells you what matters. If you are a feeling type, you make decisions based on harmony, ethics, and personal meaning. You are deeply attuned to relationships, to people's needs, to unspoken energies. You care about how things affect others. You want to do what feels right, not just what works. When this function is dominant, you shine in roles that require empathy, diplomacy, and integrity. But under stress, you may lose yourself in people-pleasing, struggle with boundaries, or sacrifice truth for peace. Your strength is compassion. Your journey is to learn how to honor your values without erasing your voice. The third function is sensing. This is the function of the present moment, of what's real, tangible, and verifiable. If you are a sensing type, you live through your five senses. You trust what you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. You notice details that others miss. You're grounded, practical, and observant. You're often the first to act when something needs to be done. Not because you rush, but because you respond to what's actually happening. You're the person people trust to follow through, to handle logistics, to get things done. But when you're overwhelmed or unbalanced, you might resist change, over-rely on routine, or struggle to connect with abstract ideas. Your gift is presence. Your work is to expand your perspective beyond what is directly in front of you. And finally, there is intuition. The function of symbols, patterns, and potential. If you are an intuitive, you don't just see what is, you see what could be. You make connections where others see chaos. You're drawn to meaning, to possibility, to the unknown. You speak in metaphors, live in ideas, and crave what hasn't been discovered yet. You don't just think about tomorrow. You think about the entire trajectory of a soul. Vision lights you up. Insight is your fuel. But with all that abstraction, you might forget the practical steps. You might leave projects half-finished, become overwhelmed by possibilities, or detach from the present. Your magic is foresight. Your challenge is learning how to anchor it. These are the four functions. Each one is valid. Each one is powerful. Each one representing a different kind of intelligence, a different kind of gift, a different way of being fully human. None is better than the other, but one of them is dominant in you. And that dominance shapes everything. But here's where it gets deeper. Because Jung didn't just identify these four functions, he saw that each one could manifest in two ways, introverted or extroverted. And that distinction changes everything. For example, A thinking function can be directed outward as extroverted thinking, focused on external logic, measurable results, and visible efficiency. These are the people who build empires, lead with strategy, and optimize systems. But introverted thinking is a different animal. It turns logic inward into deep analysis, internal frameworks, private clarity. These individuals may seem quiet or indecisive on the outside, but internally, they are refining crystalline truths that take time to articulate. The feeling function can also be external. Extroverted feeling types are tuned into the emotions of others, the atmosphere of a room, and the needs of the collective. They are the emotional glue of groups, reading and responding in real time. Meanwhile, introverted feeling types navigate through an internal value system that's often invisible to others. They are driven by authenticity, inner truth, and what feels morally aligned, even if no one else understands it. The same goes for sensing. Extroverted sensing types are fully immersed in the now, the physical, sensory world. They're spontaneous, alert, and often drawn to adventure or beauty. Introverted sensing, on the other hand, works through memory, stability, and internal references. These types recall details with eerie precision and find comfort in tradition and familiarity. Intuition, too, has its two faces. Extroverted intuition leaps between ideas, generating possibility after possibility. These types are creative, exploratory, and multi-passionate. They think out loud. They connect the dots fast. In contrast, introverted intuition is deep, still, and often prophetic. These types don't need to brainstorm. They already know. The insight comes whole, like a download. They sense trends before they happen and often surprise even themselves with the clarity of their visions. Each of these 8 expressions, thinking, feeling, sensing, intuition, each introverted or extroverted, is a complete worldview, a distinct path through the forest of life. When you know which one governs your mind, you stop walking blind. You stop blaming yourself for not being like everyone else. You begin to see your gifts not as quirks, but as compass points. You start to honor how your mind is meant to move. But here's something no one tells you. Your dominant function is not a ceiling. It's a doorway, a starting point. And your growth begins when you learn not only to understand your dominant function, but to respect and integrate the others. That doesn't mean becoming someone you're not. It means becoming more of who you are. It means realizing that while your dominant function is your home, the others are also parts of your landscape. You don't have to live in exile from them. In fact, the more you deny them, the more they will leak out in ways you don't control. Jung believed that we must bring balance to our psyche, that no function should dominate completely, that real wisdom comes from the dialogue between our functions, not the dictatorship of one. A thinker who integrates feeling gains heart. A feeler who integrates thinking gains discernment. A sensor who learns to trust intuition gains vision. An intuitive who anchors into sensing gains stability. This is where your healing begins, not by forcing yourself to be something you're not, but by making space for what you've ignored. So, which function is home for you? Not which one sounds the coolest, not which one you wish you were, but which one resonates deep in your nervous system? Which one feels like breathing? Which one has always been there, even before you had words for it? That is your psychological North Star, the way your soul was wired to see. And when you return to that, life begins to unfold, not as a struggle to become, but as a remembrance of who you've always been. You've spent most of your life building yourself around your strengths, around what came naturally, around what got rewarded, and that's not a bad thing. Your dominant function, the one you lead with, is a gift. It's the clearest expression of your mind. It's how you organize chaos, how you make sense of the world, how you survive, succeed, and connect. But what if I told you that the greatest transformation doesn't come from doubling down on your strengths, but from turning toward your weaknesses? Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole. Not perfect, not impressive, not enlightened, whole. And to become whole, you must face the part of you you've rejected, the one you've ignored, denied, suppressed, the one that lives in the basement of your psyche, the inferior function. Most people have no idea it's even there. Why would they? We're taught to lean into what works and avoid what doesn't. We're taught to celebrate our strengths and downplay our flaws. But your inferior function is not a flaw. It's a door. And if you're willing to walk through it, it will take you places your dominant function never could. Let me explain. Your mind is not one-dimensional. It operates through a hierarchy, a psychological structure. At the top is your dominant function, the part of you that feels effortless. Below that is your auxiliary function, a supportive counterpart that balances you. Then there's the tertiary, a kind of echo that emerges with time and maturity. And at the bottom, often buried in your unconscious, is your inferior function. This is the part of you you avoid, not because you hate it, but because it's unfamiliar. It's clumsy, it's slow, it embarrasses you. It's the part that shows up when you're exhausted, triggered, or overwhelmed. And when it does, it often doesn't go well. The thinker, who suddenly explodes in a flood of confusing emotion. The feeler, who shuts down completely when logic is demanded. The intuitive, who spirals into panic over a forgotten detail. The sensor, who freezes when asked to dream big. These moments don't mean you're failing. They mean your inferior function is trying to get your attention. It's not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to complete you. Jung believed that the unconscious always seeks balance, that what you suppress will always find a way to emerge through dreams, projections, symptoms, relationships, creative impulses, or breakdowns. Your mind wants you to be whole, and it will not stop until you listen. So what does that look like? If you're a dominant thinking type, your inferior function is feeling. You might pride yourself on being logical, objective, and efficient, but under stress, you may find yourself overwhelmed by raw, unpredictable emotion. You may feel irrational, out of control, even ashamed of your vulnerability. But that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the very thing that will soften your mind and open your heart. You don't need to become emotional, but you do need to allow emotion a seat at the table. If you're a dominant feeling type, your inferior function is thinking. You navigate the world through empathy, connection, and personal values. But when faced with cold logic, you may feel inadequate, dismissed, or paralyzed. You might avoid conflict, bend your truth, or struggle to make impersonal decisions. But the truth is, reason isn't the enemy of feeling. It's its ally. Learning to think clearly doesn't betray your values. It helps you express them with more impact. If you're a dominant sensing type, your inferior function is intuition. You live in the present. You trust what's real. But when the situation calls for imagination, abstraction, or long-term vision, you may panic. You may dismiss those who live in the clouds or feel overwhelmed by possibilities. But intuition isn't a threat to your groundedness. It's an extension of it. It gives your actions direction. It helps you see not just what is, but what could be. If you're a dominant intuitive, your inferior function is sensing. You're a visionary, an idealist, a pattern seeker. But when reality hits, you may shut down. You might neglect your body, your space, and your practical needs. You may forget to eat, lose track of time, or struggle to implement your ideas. But sensory awareness isn't a burden. It's your bridge back to earth. It helps you bring your visions into form. Each inferior function has its terrain, its lessons, its own magic, but only if you're brave enough to enter it. And it will feel uncomfortable. Growth always does. You might feel awkward, incompetent, like you're learning to walk again. You'll want to run back to what's easy. You'll want to explain it away, rationalize it, ignore it. But don't. Stay with it. Because the more you bring consciousness to that hidden part of you, the less control it has over you. The more it becomes a partner instead of a saboteur. The more your life begins to feel not just functional, but full. This is the real work. Not becoming the best version of your dominant type, but becoming a human being who can hold contradictions, logic and emotion, immediacy and vision, depth and practicality. You weren't meant to be one-dimensional. You were meant to be a whole ecosystem. And here's where it gets even more powerful. Your inferior function is not just about your inner world. It also shows up in your relationships. Often, we are magnetized to people who embody our weakest function. It's as if something in us wants to learn, to grow, to become more. But what starts as attraction can quickly turn to conflict. The thinker gets frustrated with the feeler's sensitivity. The feeler feels unseen by the thinker's detachment. The intuitive feels limited by the sensor's realism. The sensor feels overwhelmed by the intuitive's abstractions. But if you can recognize what's happening, if you can name the functions at play, you stop fighting the person and start learning from them. That person you struggle with, they might be the mirror showing you what you've neglected in yourself. That thing that irritates you, it might be the medicine you've avoided. That trigger, it might be a guidepost. Jung didn't see these tensions as mistakes. He saw them as sacred opportunities. Every relationship is a classroom. Every conflict is a curriculum. And your inferior function is the teacher you've been avoiding. But you don't have to master it. You just have to respect it. That's what integration means. Not domination, not perfection, but respect. Balance. Dialogue. So, how do you begin? Start small. Start by noticing. Notice when you're triggered. What part of you feels under threat? What function is being challenged? Notice what drains you. Where are you overusing your dominant function? Notice what scares you. What part of yourself have you been taught to fear? Then experiment. If you're a thinker, spend time journaling your emotions, not to solve them, but to feel them. If you're a feeler, try making a decision based on objective facts, even if it's uncomfortable. If you're a sensor, sit in silence with a wild idea, just to see what it brings up. If you're an intuitive, do one mundane task with complete attention. Feel your feet on the ground. your breath in your body. You're not trying to become someone else. You're trying to retrieve what you lost. Because deep down, you already hold all four functions. They are yours by birthright. Some are louder, some are quieter. But all of them belong. All of them are part of your wholeness. So stop running from the part of you that doesn't come naturally. Start walking toward it. It might just be the part that brings you home. At some point, someone gave you a label. Maybe it was a teacher, a parent, a friend, or a therapist. Maybe it was a quiz you took online one night out of curiosity. You're a thinker. You're a feeler. You're an INTJ. You're a 7. You're a Virgo. And something about it felt good. Like someone finally saw you. Like the chaos inside had been named. Like there was a box where you finally fit. And so you took the label. You wore it. You made it your identity. It helped you understand yourself. It gave you language for things no one ever explained before. But then something happened. The label became a limit. You stopped exploring. You stopped questioning. You stopped growing. You told yourself, I don't do that. I'm not that type. You rejected parts of yourself that didn't fit the story. You made choices based on an image, not your evolution. And slowly, without even noticing, the very thing that freed you began to trap you. Carl Jung never intended for his typology to become a prison. He never meant for you to reduce yourself to 4 letters or one dominant function. He saw types as starting points, not finish lines, as maps, not territories, as invitations, not identities. Because you are not a static being. You are a dynamic, unfolding, living process. You're not meant to find your type and stop. You're meant to find your type and begin. But that's not how most people use personality systems. In a culture obsessed with clarity, categories, and control, we want neat answers. We want to know what box we're in so we can finally stop feeling lost. And yet, in that search for certainty, we often cut off the very mystery that leads us home. You are not just a thinker or a feeler. You are not just an intuitive or a sensor. You are a breathing paradox, a walking contradiction, a mosaic of light and shadow, chaos and clarity, softness and fire. Jung understood this. That's why he never framed personality as fixed. He believed in the fluidity of the psyche, that who you are is always evolving, always rebalancing, always seeking wholeness. Your dominant function might shape the way you show up today, but it doesn't define who you must become tomorrow. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago. You won't be the same 5 years from now. And that's not a failure of type. It's the success of growth. The danger comes when we cling to the type like a lifeline. When we say, I can't change, I'm just this way. When we use our personality as a shield to avoid discomfort, confrontation, and vulnerability. I'm an introvert, so I don't like people. I'm a feeler, so I can't handle hard decisions. I'm a sensor, so I don't do abstract thinking. I'm a thinker, so I don't do emotions. But these aren't traits. They're defense mechanisms. They're unconscious stories we tell to protect ourselves from expanding into unfamiliar terrain. And it makes sense, because stepping outside of your known identity is terrifying. It means confronting parts of yourself you've kept locked away. It means admitting that maybe you don't know yourself as well as you thought. It means surrendering to the mystery of who you could become. But growth lives there, in the space between who you've been and who you're becoming. That's why Jung's deeper work focused not just on identifying your dominant function, but on integrating your entire psyche. He believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not about becoming a better version of your type. It's about stepping outside of type altogether. Imagine a thinker who learns to feel without shame, a feeler who learns to think without guilt, a sensor who embraces imagination, an intuitive who becomes grounded in the present. That's not becoming someone else. That's becoming real. Because the truth is, you already have all four functions inside you: thinking, feeling, sensing, intuition. They're not separate personalities. They're tools. They're dimensions of your own consciousness. Some are stronger, some are quieter, but none of them are missing. They're waiting. They're watching. They're asking to be let in. But they won't force their way through. They wait for your permission. And if you never grant it, you stay stuck. You become a caricature of yourself, over-reliant on your dominant function, fragile under stress, one-sided in relationships, rigid in your worldview. That's what happens when you over-identify with your type. You don't grow. You calcify. You don't evolve. You entrench. It's like working out only one muscle group over and over. Sure, that part of you becomes strong, but the rest weakens. And over time, your imbalance becomes injury, not just physically, but emotionally, relationally, spiritually. You begin to resent the very strengths you once relied on. You burn out. You lose connection. You feel numb. You feel stuck. And the worst part? You don't know why. Because from the outside, everything looks the same. You're still being yourself, still thinking, still feeling, still sensing, still intuiting. But inside, you've outgrown the box. And the box is starting to hurt. That's when you know it's time to shed the label. Not to reject it, not to deny it, but to move beyond it. To let your type become a tool, not a trap. To say, I'm a thinker, but I'm learning how to listen to my heart. I'm a feeler, but I'm discovering the power of logic. I'm a sensor, but I'm opening to the unknown. I'm an intuitive, but I'm learning to trust what's real. That's not weakness. That's courage. That's how healing happens. That's how integration begins. Because when you release the need to be a type, you make room to be a person. You make room to feel things you haven't let yourself feel. To think thoughts you've never dared to think. To explore desires that never fit the old script. You don't lose yourself. You find more of yourself. So if you're holding onto your label too tightly, let go. You're not here to prove your personality. You're here to become your soul. Let your dominant function guide you, but don't let it define you. Let your inferior function challenge you, but don't let it shame you. Let your full psyche unfold. Wild, imperfect, alive. Because that's what Jung meant by wholeness. Not balanced like symmetry. Balance like harmony. Like music. Like jazz. Like life. A real, raw, unpredictable dance between what you've always known and what you're just beginning to remember. You are not your personality. You are not your type. You are not your function. You are what lies beneath all of it. A soul, a self, a mystery unfolding. And you're just getting started. There's a part of you you don't talk about, a version of you that lingers just out of reach, not because it's gone, but because you buried it. You didn't mean to. It happened slowly, silently, systematically. Every time you were told, don't act like that, stop crying, be realistic, you're too intense, that's not okay. You learned. You learned what parts of you were allowed and what parts weren't. So you hid them. Not because you were weak, but because you were wise, because you were trying to survive, to be loved, to be safe, to belong. But what got exiled didn't disappear. It became your shadow. Carl Jung defined the shadow as everything within us that we refuse to see, everything we reject, suppress, deny, or avoid, not just the bad stuff, but the real stuff. Anger, sadness, desire, power, ambition, envy, need, even joy, even brilliance. Anything that didn't fit your environment, anything that felt too big, too loud, too raw, that became shadow. And now, it lives in the basement of your psyche, not dead, just hidden, waiting, watching, influencing. Because the shadow doesn't go quietly. It leaks, it erupts, it projects. It shows up in your sharpest judgments, in the traits you can't stand in others, in the ways you sabotage your success, in the patterns you keep repeating but can't explain, in the relationships you attract, in the things you avoid, in the moments you explode and wonder, where did that come from? It came from the shadow. And the more you try to ignore it, the louder it gets. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's not a warning. That's an invitation. Because what you've buried is not your enemy. It's your missing piece. The shadow isn't evil. It's emotional. It's the part of you that got hurt and didn't get to speak. It's the part of you that got shamed and didn't get to heal. It's the part of you that said, I need help, and no one came. So it learned to pretend. It learned to cope. It learned to armor up. But underneath the armor is something ancient and holy. Your authenticity, your aliveness, your truth. See, we tend to think of the shadow as darkness, but that's not quite right. The shadow is anything left in the dark. That includes your hidden light, your creativity, your sensuality, your confidence, your intuition, your rage, your grief, your longing, your power. And if you want to be whole, not just functional, not just liked, not just together, but whole, you have to go get it back. That's the real journey. Not the curated path of self-improvement, but the wild, wholly unpredictable path of self-retrieval. It's not clean. It's not linear. It's not easy. But it's real. And that makes it worth it. So how do you meet your shadow? First, you stop judging it. You stop calling it wrong. You stop moralizing your mess. Shadow work isn't about shaming yourself into better behavior. It's about holding up a mirror and saying, I see you. You belong. Then you start noticing. Notice what triggers you, not just annoys you, but activates you. What people make you irrationally angry? What traits in others make your skin crawl? What compliments do you dismiss or deflect? What part of yourself are you constantly trying to fix? That's where your shadow lives. If you're a thinker, maybe your shadow is the messy, emotional, reactive part of you. The part that cries during commercials. The part that panics. The part that says, I don't know. If you're a feeler, Maybe your shadow is the cold, calculating voice that says, it doesn't matter what they feel. It's not working. The part that says no without guilt. The part that cuts ties. If you're a sensor, maybe your shadow is the chaotic dreamer, the visionary who sees beyond the present, the part that wants more than what's here and now. If you're an intuitive, maybe your shadow is the grounded, earthy, practical doer, the part that says, sit down, finish what you started, take care of your body, whatever it is. When you feel resistance, there's gold underneath it, because your shadow is not here to ruin you. It's here to reunite you. The parts you've exiled are the parts you most need to heal. The anger you repress is the anger that would give you boundaries. The sadness you avoid is the sadness that would give you depth. The jealousy you deny is the jealousy that would teach you desire. The fear you hide is the fear that would keep you humble. The ambition you suppress is the ambition that would give you direction. You can't cut out the shadow and expect to thrive. You can only integrate it. And integration doesn't mean acting out. It doesn't mean giving every emotion full control. It means becoming conscious of what's been unconscious. It means choosing how to respond, not reacting from the dark. It means giving the shadow a name, because when you name it, you reclaim it. You take back the energy it's been using to operate from behind the scenes. You make room for it in your heart. You listen to what it needs. You thank it for trying to protect you. And then you set new terms, because you are not at the mercy of your shadow. You are the one who gets to choose what becomes of it. And here's the miracle. When you begin to integrate your shadow, something in your life shifts. The triggers lessen, the projections fade, the compulsions quiet down. You stop chasing or avoiding. You begin to feel more you, more stable, more clear, more open, more powerful. Not because you've eliminated your darkness, but because you've stopped running from it. You've faced the cave. You've walked inside. And you've found the treasure. That treasure is you. Not the edit you. Not the acceptable you. The real you. The raw, radiant, uncontainable self that's been waiting for you to come back. Jung said that the shadow is 90% pure gold. But you'll never know that until you dare to look. So if you're tired of pretending, look. If you're tired of repeating the same patterns, look. If you're tired of wondering why things feel off, even when they look right, look. Don't just look outside. Look within. Your shadow is not your shame. It's your signal. It's the part of you screaming for reintegration. And when you listen, you come alive. You stop just surviving. You start belonging to yourself. That's what this work is about. Not polishing your persona, not becoming more normal, but becoming real. And reality includes the dark. So go there. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. And because the version of you that you've been looking for, they're already there, in the dark, waiting for you to say, I see you. I'm ready. Let's come home. You've spent most of your life learning how to become acceptable, learning how to be good, responsible, and impressive, learning how to fit into a world that rewards conformity and punishes depth. You've been taught how to succeed, how to behave, how to make people like you. But almost no one ever taught you the one thing that matters: how to become whole. Carl Jung called it individuation. Not just self-awareness, not just healing, not even self-love. Individuation is the sacred process of becoming who you are beneath the roles, beneath the conditioning, beneath the protective masks you didn't even know you were wearing. It's not a spiritual trend. It's not a feel-good idea. It's psychological alchemy, a metamorphosis of the soul. It begins the moment you stop asking, "Who do I need to be?" and start asking, "Who have I always been?" Because the truth is, most people don't live from their essence. They live from adaptation. They live from survival. They live from scripts passed down like hand-me-downs. Scripts written by parents, teachers, culture, and religion. And because they follow those scripts, they may be praised. They may be productive. They may even feel successful. But they don't feel alive. They feel like they're performing themselves instead of being themselves. Individuation is the process of ending that performance. It doesn't mean rejecting the world. It means returning to your center, to the parts of you that got silenced, to the voices within that you abandoned for approval. It means reconciling what you were told you should be with what you've always known you are. And that process is not glamorous. It's not about becoming more of your type. It's about integrating the entire system of your psyche, your dominant function, your inferior function, your shadow, your persona, your wounds, your instincts, your intuition. It's about reclaiming what was fragmented and weaving it back into one cohesive self. Jung believed that no one can hand you your identity. You have to go down and find it. In the darkness, in the tension, in the silence, in the grief, in the parts of yourself you've spent your whole life avoiding. Because individuation requires something most people aren't ready for. It requires you to lose the person you thought you were. It requires you to peel away the protective layers of your personality, not to destroy yourself, but to uncover your true shape underneath. It asks you to face the contradictions within, the part of you that wants freedom, and the part of you that fears it, the part of you that craves connection, and the part that sabotages intimacy, the part that dreams of impact, and the part that hides from being seen. You are not one thing. You are not one identity. You are not one fixed point in time. You are a dynamic whole, made of paradox, made of opposites, made of fire and water and soil and sky. And individuation is the process of letting all of that go. Not just the light, not just the strengths, not just the socially approved pieces, all of it. Your intuition, your logic, your needs, your rage, your longing, your limits, your silence, your chaos, your clarity. Nothing gets left behind. But don't mistake this process for something passive. It's not something that just happens because you read a book or watch a video. It's a commitment, a discipline, a return, again and again. You'll think you've arrived, only to discover another layer. You'll have breakthroughs followed by breakdowns. You'll meet joy and grief in the same breath. You'll find clarity, then lose it, then find it again in a deeper form. That's how you know you're on the right path. Because the path of individuation is not straight. It's spiral. And every time you circle back, You're not going backward, you're going deeper. Individuation is not about perfection. It's about integration. It doesn't mean eliminating the parts of you that make life messy. It means learning how to hold them, to carry your complexity without collapsing into it, to let your wounds speak without letting them lead. Because the more you integrate, the less power your unconscious has over you. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from awareness. You stop projecting your shadow onto others and start reclaiming it as your own. You stop trying to fix yourself and start becoming yourself. And that self is not a product of the world. It's not a product of your past. It's not even a product of your thoughts. It's something deeper, something sacred, something eternal. The self, in Jungian terms, is not your ego. It's not your personality. It's not your achievements or your preferences. The self is your inner wholeness, your divine blueprint, the totality of who you are and who you could be, seen and unseen, conscious and unconscious, present and potential. And individuation is the process of aligning your outer life with that inner truth. The process of becoming so rooted in your essence that no label, no expectation, no trauma, no illusion can pull you away from it again. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What is true for me now?" You stop living for approval and start living in alignment. You stop hiding parts of yourself to keep peace and start owning them to create integrity. This is not selfish. This is sacred, because the more whole you become, the more healing you bring into the world. When you stop projecting your wounds, you stop hurting others. When you stop denying your gifts, you start uplifting others. When you stop fearing your power, you permit others to reclaim theirs. That's what Jung understood better than anyone. That the world doesn't change because we talk about consciousness. It changes when people become conscious. When we stop blaming, when we stop numbing, when we stop pretending, and begin remembering. Remembering that we are not here to perform a version of ourselves. We are here to embody our full humanity. To look into the mirror of our soul and say, "I will no longer leave myself behind." That is individuation, and it's not something you can rush. It's not a checklist. It's not linear, but it's real. It's alive, and it's already happening inside you if you're willing to listen. So let go of the masks. Let go of the scripts. Let go of the false identities that were never yours to begin with. Your mind is not your enemy. Your complexity is not your flaw. Your longing is not your weakness. They are doorways, and the self is on the other side. So go. Go inward. Go downward. Go deeper. Not to fix yourself, but to finally meet the person you were always meant to be. There comes a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when you realize that no one is coming to save you. Not the world, not your parents, not your partner, not your guru. The mirror doesn't lie. The journey has always been yours to walk, and suddenly, all the distractions fall away. The noise, the roles, the masks. What's left is you. Not the you show to get love, not the version you perform to be safe, but the raw, honest self behind it all. The one that has always been watching, waiting, whispering, "Come back." Carl Jung called this return the greatest task of a human life. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you were trained to be, not who the world expected, not who your trauma taught you to become, but you, undivided, embodied, conscious, whole." And yet, most people will never take this path. They'll build perfect resumes and empty relationships. They'll stay busy to avoid silence. They'll chase validation in all its forms: money, praise, status, beauty, and still feel the ache, the hollowness, the quiet question they keep trying to outrun. Is this all there is? Number? It isn't. There's more. There's always been more. But you can't find it outside of you. You have to go inward, where the ego dissolves and the soul remembers. Inward, where the shadow waits with its lessons. Inward, where the self waits to be claimed. This is the path of individuation, the path of descent and return, of fragmentation and integration, the path of becoming whole. It doesn't begin in comfort. It begins in crisis, in the breakdowns that strip your certainty, in the grief that splits you open, in the moments when the life you built can no longer contain the truth of who you are. It's there, in the silence after the storm, that the real work begins, the work of rebuilding from the inside out. This is not about reinventing yourself. It's about uncovering yourself. Because beneath every adaptation, every defense, every mask, there is something untouched, something incorruptible, something sovereign, yourself, your essence, your flame. It's not a fantasy. It's not a metaphor. It's real. And you can feel it in the choices that bring peace, in the relationships that awaken you, in the moments that move through you like deja vu, sudden, sacred, inexplicable. You were never lost, just layered, covered, distracted, and now you're remembering. This remembrance changes everything. It changes the way you love, not from need, but from presence. It changes the way you lead, not from ego, but from alignment. It changes the way you speak, not to be right, but to be real. It changes the way you live, because when you become the self, you stop living reactively. You live responsibly. You stop chasing roles. You start embodying purpose. You stop fearing your darkness. You walk with it. You let it teach you. You let it inform your light. And you realize nothing was ever wasted. Not the pain, not the detours, not the years spent asleep. Everything served your becoming. Every heartbreak softened your defenses. Every failure cracked your pride. Every loss stripped away illusion. You didn't fall behind. You fell into the truth. Because that's what individuation is. Not a spiritual escape, but a sacred arrival. Right here, right now. Fully human, fully divine, fully alive. It doesn't make life easier, but it makes life real. You'll still face fear. You'll still be misunderstood. You'll still walk through fire, but you won't abandon yourself to do it. And that changes everything. You'll know how to listen to your inner voice, even when it goes against the crowd. You'll know how to stay rooted when the world tries to shake you. You'll know how to forgive yourself, not just for what you did, but for who you forgot you were. This is the quiet revolution. Not a rebellion against the world, but a homecoming to the self. It's not loud. It's not glamorous. No one may applaud you, but your soul will know. And it will sing. Because once you taste this kind of freedom, there's no going back. You no longer need to be understood to feel whole. You no longer need to be liked to feel love. You no longer need to win to feel worthy. You simply are. And from that place, life becomes art. Not a race, not a role, but a creation. Something sacred and strange and beautifully your own. So if you feel the pull, if some part of you has been aching to remember, to return, to become, follow it. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. You were never meant to stay small. You were never meant to live half a life. You were born to unfold, to expand, to embody the fullness of your being. This is your invitation to walk the path no one else can walk for you, to claim the identity no one else can define for you, to live a life not of reaction, but of realization. This is individuation. This is the mystery. This is the self, and it's calling you home. Right now, not someday, not when you're more ready, not when the world makes it safe. Now. So take a breath, close your eyes, feel the truth rising in your chest, and remember, the privilege of a lifetime is not to impress the world. It's to become who you truly are.